more specifically to the point, we want to talk to people who are in successful recovery, and there are loads of you out there. You call us every week. You share your stories with us, and we're always grateful for that. I want to move it a little bit away from your personal experience with your stories of recovery and talk about how you used your experience to talk to your kids about these problems, or now your grandchildren. Baby boomers got grandchildren now. Is it helpful? Can it be a detriment? Does it give you more credibility on the issue of drugs and alcohol? Does it give you less credibility? Because in a strange sense, Gary and I have talked about this, it can be problematic, particularly, ironically, if you're in recovery. Because as you said,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I find it with,
kids say,
you know, if you're in successful recovery, the kid says, well, Dad or Mom, you did it. You turned out fine.
how bad can it be?
How
You got
bad can it
straight.
be? Exactly.
So there's this great irony in recovery when it comes to your family and your children, that it not become a kind of license to go ahead and experiment with drugs or alcohol. You cannot allow, it would seem to me, your positive experience of recovery to be used as an excuse for the kids to go, how bad can it be?
I think at that point you need to use statistics to show that most people don't make it. And if you are in successful recovery, you can tell your kids how many people didn't make it, dead didn't make it.
In addition to which, we know from all the data that this disease of addiction is a disease that runs through families. So everything else we've said about, you know, cautionary tales and having a dialogue with your kids and keeping an eye on them is made all the more critical for people who have had this disease in their family, because we know it occurs throughout families. There is clearly some sort of inherited or learned experience that addicts can pass on.
And what I found, Steve, is the recovering addicts are hypersensitive on this issue with kids. Whereas if a parent that hasn't gotten into trouble, they might not take it as seriously as somebody who has been through this themselves.
So to the extent you're willing to share these stories with us, we're very appreciative. As we said, every week, lots of folks call, share their stories with us. We now want to expand beyond your personal experience with addiction and recovery to discuss how you dealt with it in your family, with your children. What are you telling them? Are they listening? As Gary said, it's always hard to get them to listen to anything. This is something they must listen to and must be aware of. So we're live. I remind you of that every week. This is not canned. You can call and talk to us right now. We really hope you'll do that today, because this can be very, very valuable. 610-664-4100. Call through. Tim will put you on the air. We promise you won't have to hang long. This isn't sports radio or political radio.
That's correct.
We can get you on very quickly. And again, we say it every week, say it again. People's personal testimony in this area is very powerful. Others hear this. I think it can help a lot of people. So how do you deal with it around your house? Gary, let me tell you exactly why I thought of this as a topic. I don't know whether you watch the program Louis. The comedian Louis C.K. has an absolutely amazing program called Louis. It's on Fox FX, I think.
When is it on?
It's on Monday nights. Now, he's a comedian, and over the years I've been watching it, it's wildly funny, hysterically funny. But this current season, which just concluded, I think, last week, has been somewhat different, where Louis delved into family issues, some really interesting family issues. The concluding episode last week, an hour and a half, is what happens when Louis sees his 12-year-old daughter smoking marijuana. It's one of the most powerful and interesting looks at how a dad reacts to that moment. And I won't go into great lengths about it, but he offers no real solutions, except that he tries to support his daughter at the end of the program and let her know that she's loved and that he's only worried about her. But there's no preaching, and it's really a reflection on Louis's life, because Louis, like many of us, grew up in a drug culture. He's used drugs, and he finds himself in that bind. How do I act as a parental authority here when I've experimented with it, when I have experience with it? She probably knows that. How do I deal with this? And they flash back to show you what happened to Louis when he was in middle and then high school, and he was experimenting with drugs. If you saw the program, it was very powerful. But again, as I said, it's honest enough that he doesn't leave you at the end with a prescription on how to deal with this, because I don't know that there is a prescription on how to deal with this.
There's no text on this. You know, that reminds me, I remember the first time I saw my daughter smoking a regular cigarette. How can I say it's bad for you, you can't smoke, when I used to smoke and do smoke, still smoke cigars? So it's that contradiction constantly. And as we're going to talk about more with the advent of marijuana becoming legal, and it will become legal in this state also, how do you tell them not to smoke when everybody's going to be doing it?
Yeah, there are loads of programs. They've been in the schools for years, trying to alert kids to the dangers of drug and alcohol. To the extent it's working good, it doesn't appear to be. It seems that the problem of drugs and alcohol in schools and in colleges is as big and growing bigger all the time. And as, again, the audience that we have here is unique. It is unique. These are people who have been there and done that. Now, the uniqueness is either good or it can be bad. Because as you said, they could look at you and go, hey, you cleaned up. What's the big deal? So how have you dealt with it? Has it come up? Do you find that people, I'll ask Gary, you find that people with and Gary's 32 years sober, and you would put your drug experience up against anybody.
Yeah.
You've got plenty of experience with how bad this can be.
As they say, I've earned a seat.
Yeah, you're
in
at the
AA.
table. You're in the room for sure.
Yeah.
Let me ask you. I'll ask you directly. Do you think it has enhanced your credibility, diminished your credibility, or do you think it, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter?
I think it has enhanced my credibility. I can only speak about my kids. They grew up with me sober, knowing me sober. They never saw me stoned. And they see the reaction I get from other people, the respect I get. They see what happens in a meeting, an anniversary meeting. They're sitting there. They see the whole thing. So I think it has enhanced my credibility. I do.
Well, we want to hear from others who have either that experience or any other experience. Have you been honest with the members of your family? I understand that's sort of a cardinal tenet in recovery, is that you be honest, correct?
Yeah. I'm totally honest.
It's very difficult, though, to share these kinds of stories with kids and hope that they don't just roll their eyes. Because, you get that.
Well, of course. I mean, nobody thinks it's going to happen to them. It's like nobody thinks they're going to get caught and go to jail if they commit a crime. So you can only do your best. You can only lead by example. Never know what's going to happen.
610-664-4100. If you have had the occasion to have this conversation with your kids, particularly, guys, Gary makes a great point, particularly those of you who have achieved your sobriety relatively recently, in other words, within the lifetime of your children, so they could be aware of what was going on, so they could see what your behavior was like.